Hello there guys, and welcome to Zealwood, brand new review channel I've decided to make. Want to start things off with Resident Evil 2 Remake. Yes, I know I've uploaded this very late and the game has been out for fucking ages, but fuck it, we'll review it anyway. Right, so Resident Evil 2 Remake, obviously Capcom's remake attempt of Resident Evil 2, back from the PS1 from 1999, or was it 98 I think? Same as the original, single-player, self-contained survival horror game, set in a zombie-infested town called Raccoon City. Two protagonists enter the city, Claire and Leon, without any knowledge of the zombie outbreak. Both make their way to the Raccoon City Police Department to find out what's going on, pretty much. Now, for the actual game itself, aesthetically, it is stunning. You know, it's made on a brand new Resident Evil engine, which they did with Resident Evil 7. As I mentioned before, the game is self-contained rather than open world, which means the draw distance is a lot less than some other games, meaning that the graphics, character detail is a lot better. As I said, the character attention to detail is brilliant. The colours used are primarily dark and quite dull, which makes everything look very realistic. The game is very dark in general, obviously set at night time, which really brings out the lighting effects of street lights, fires on the roads, reflecting light on different textures like the marble floors, stone walls, and especially when it's raining outside as well. Pretty much everything in this game which is wet looks really good. Oi oi cheeky! Now, for the ambience is very eerie. You have to play this game with headphones or earphones on to really bring out the fear factor of this game. There's a lot of echoing sounds in the distance, very realistic sounds from breathing, footsteps. Your character in general sounds really good, very realistic. This really adds to the fear again, when you're traversing through new rooms or scary hallways, things like that, especially when something triggers and you end up shitting your pants because of it. Now, the default Resident Evil 2 OSTs you get with the remake aren't bad, they're okay. A lot of it is pretty much just high and low tones and drawn out sounds, but to be honest, you don't really notice a soundtrack really, because like I said, it's more of a background kind of music. But when something scary happens, then you can notice the music, because then it starts to kick in, obviously. But I'll explain all that later. Now for the gameplay. So, as you're probably aware, Resident Evil 2 doesn't have any kind of levels, stats, equipment other than weapons, really. With the addition of armor, healing items and key items, and that's pretty much all you have. Obviously it's a very realistic based survival horror game, of course. Now, the character movement is very realistic when turning or moving around or changing direction, 180, 360s, because it's a very natural movement. It'd be pretty unnatural if you could 360 immediately and run full speed in that direction, and then 360 again in the opposite direction, but, it's not very realistic. When it comes to interacting with objects like doors or items, it's okay. You do get kind of like a close-up of a door or close-up of a statue when you use an item or progress that said object. You do get a nice small animation, which is okay. I suppose you could call it a substitute for the loading screens of Resident Evil 2, with just the door animations. So the UI is pretty much non-existent, which is nice. It's just quite literally gameplay. You have nothing on screen unless you're reloading, or unless you take damage. Otherwise there's literally nothing, it's just you and what you can see. It's very blank, which is fine, because in Resident Evil 2, the original, there was no UI either, unless obviously you open up the start menu or inventory, things like that. Now, a large portion of the game is so dark that your character has to use a mandatory torch, which is good and bad. Obviously it provides light in the direction which you're travelling, of course, but it does narrow your line of sight quite a bit, and it makes the jump scares a lot more likely. It's a bit of a shame that they couldn't give an option to have this on and off, but it makes sense why it would be mandatory, since it's a realistic game, again. Now, the inventory is very clean, sleek, but it is quite limited. You are forced to manage your items and to decide what you should be carrying and what you shouldn't. For the items that you shouldn't really be carrying, you can store them in a storage box. Storage boxes are located almost in all save rooms, but not in all. All storage boxes are linked, so if you deposit an item in one box, you can get it in another box in a different room, which is good. So the aiming is also really good. When you're aiming, your reticle is quite large to begin with, but the longer you aim and don't move, the quicker your reticle gets so small that you've got a precise shot. So it kind of forces you to actually take your time and to give yourself a fair bit of distance away from the enemy. I can see why they've chosen to go with this kind of gameplay feature, because they obviously want to stay away from the third-person shooter category, and they want to stay towards the survival horror, obviously, because Resident Evil 2, again, survival horror. This aiming feature, combined with realistic movements, makes interacting with enemies and bosses a lot harder than you'd think, obviously, because you have to position yourself with a nice bit of distance there away from your enemies to give you time to actually aim and shoot. And you can't just go guns blazing all over the place, because you're also restricted on your healing and ammo throughout the game. You know, it's not abundant. You're quite restricted on the items which you are provided, especially on the harder difficulties where enemies take the piss a bit on hardcore, which I love again. This kind of makes you consider where you actually want to kill and what you want to avoid, obviously to maintain as much ammo reserve as possible. The main enemy in this game is your classic slowish moving zombie. You know, you do get a few other uglies here and there to provide a bit more of a challenge as you progress the game. With the zombies, when you kill them, depending on if you blow off their heads or not, they're not actually dead, which adds to the overall difficulty of the game. Boss fights are quite varied and unique, meaning you actually have to use your head a decent amount, and you can't just go in guns blazing and just shooting any part of the boss's body. Like some bosses have specific tactics or targets you have to shoot, obviously to beat them, pretty much. Now, if I were to summarise Resident Evil 2 Remake into one word, that word would probably be cozy, actually. You know, again, it's exactly the same when I was a kid and I played Resident Evil 2 on the PS1. I love how it's so claustrophobic, you know, it's so secluded. It gives you the feeling of satisfaction. Well, personally, I think. So, as an example, because of these claustrophobic corridors and things, and when you're traversing areas like, you know, the labs or around the main hall or the car park, things like that, in the original, they really give you a sense of comfort when you go into these new areas that you've never been before, kill all the enemies, and then you can backtrack safely. I love the feeling of backtracking safely. It just feels really nice until obviously events happen, and then the rooms that you cleared, there's new enemies there. It's the same as Resident Evil 2 Remake, except the only thing which makes it not so satisfying for me is the fact that when you kill a zombie, unless you headshot them, they will regenerate. And by regenerate, I mean get back up. You may kill them, or would appear to kill them. They don't seem to be reacting to anything, but when you do come back to them again, they will get back up. So it does keep you on edge a little bit more, and it's not as cozy as the original, which is fine. But if anything, it makes the game a lot more difficult. Similar to Resident Evil 1 Remake, where you would kill zombies and they would get up angrier than they were before, and they'd actually run at you, which it's not as hard as that, but it's fine. Like I said, it's a really good game, and I really love the feature that they've put into that. One of the things I really don't like about the game is how Leon and Claire interact with each other. I feel like in the original they actually interacted more on the PS1 than they do on the PS4, for example. So I like how the way they've done it is you'll play as Leon and you'll only be allowed in rooms with a club key, but then you play as Claire and you'll only be allowed in rooms with a heart key. That's fine. It's a bit... They could have really... I suppose you could say they had the opportunity and potential to really make that something special. Like they could have... I don't know, they could have made Leon interact with a heart door, which is obviously locked, but then the next time you go off, you do something, you activate an event, you trigger something, you come back, and then that door is actually just wide open. And it would be nice, so as soon as you enter that room, Leon does a little nod to Claire and says, "Oh, Claire must have opened this door." You know, the way games are progressing and the way coding is improving, you know, with all these new engines and things like that, they could have done something like that, you know, just to make it a little more enveloping. You know, the experience of the game is a lot more realistic, better. Another minor detail I didn't really like is when you fully use a key or you fully use an item, you have to go into your inventory. It has a little tick next to it, which means that you can't use it anywhere else, and you have to manually click it and discard it. Now, in a lot of the previous Resident Evil games, as soon as you fully used an item or a key, it comes up on your screen. It says, "Would you like to discard this key?" Okay, so you could argue and say that also takes away from the envelopment of the game. But I feel if they're going to give us a little red tick, you know, they could at least allow the character to, I don't know, let's say you use a key on a door and then you no longer need that key for anything else. It would be nice if they can just simply show the player that they're throwing it on the floor. I don't know, it doesn't have to stay on the floor, it can despawn, but it would have been nice, you know, if they're going to put the little detail with the opening doors and the locking, like when you break the chains, then they could have put in a little detail where you actually discard items. Now, this is a bit of a big one for me. The classic OSTs that you have to pay for are mandatory. There's no doubt about it, they are mandatory. Resident Evil 2 from the PS1 music is fucking brilliant. It's probably one of the best games for scary music out there. You know, it's definitely in my top 10, maybe my top 5 for scary, you know, eerie OSTs. Now, you simply can't play without it. I had to buy it. I had to buy it and play all my playthroughs, even on hardcore, with the original OSTs. There's no excuse. I don't like how they made players pay for it. That's a bit bad. They should have just simply had it in the game anyway with just an option, or in fact they should have just had the original OSTs with no other variations, because essentially it is a remake. But I'm not too upset because, like I said, you know, they do offer you an option to pay, so you could argue and say that they didn't really have to put these OSTs in the game anyway. So either way, I'm happy. Like I said, you have to purchase the classic OSTs to play this game. You have to. Another little detail which I don't mind, well, I say a little detail, it's a fucking big detail, is the fact that Capcom decided to go for the third person, you know, like Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5, I think. Yeah, I think they're all third person. Whereas Resident Evil 2 was a fixed camera angle game. Now, when Resident Evil 2 was announced, I was hoping it would have been like Resident Evil 1 Remake, where it's fixed camera angles. I fucking love that game. I've got every achievement in Resident Evil 1, for the PS4 actually. Love it. But I was a little bit upset, and I did try sticking to my guns on this. The fact that they should have kept it fixed camera angles, but the way, you know, the quality and the, you know, the love and the care and the attention to detail that they've paid in the remake, it's not too bad. You know, it could have been a lot worse, and I feel like I should have been a bit more open-minded about a third-person game, because they've really knocked it out of the park this time. Fair play to them. Capcom have done a really good job. Now, to answer the big question, is it worth your time? Yes, of course it is, definitely. I'm going to give this game a 4.5 stars, and 89 out of 100, I'd say. It's brilliant. It's a must-buy, and you will complete it more than once. It's, like I said, really good. They've taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of care into making this game. You know, the graphics are really good. Not the graphics are everything. Graphics aren't everything. But I mean, you know, with the additional details of, like, the harder difficulties are really good. When I mentioned about interactions with Claire and Leon, what they have done is okay. I don't mind it. It's really good. Could have been better, like I said, and that would have put up the rating a bit. I also love how they brought back, you know, the tofu, really fun. They brought back Hank on the 4 survivor modes, really good, very addictive, especially if you've got competitive friends who also like the game. You know, you can challenge each other's times, really fun. I haven't really messed around too much on these Ghost Survivor. Well, I've done most of them, but with the waves of monsters, it's okay, but you know, it wasn't part of the original release, so it's not really going to affect this game's rating. But like I said, guys, really good game. You have to buy it. You won't regret it. You know, it's not the kind of game where you can just get satisfied of watching, you know, speed run of it or a playthrough. You have to experience it yourself. You know, there are a lot of games out there which aren't that good, where you could get away with just watching a couple of videos, but no, with this game you have to get it. It's really good. I cannot recommend it anymore. It's a very high rating. So yeah, I love it. I do love it. So guys, I hope you enjoy the video. I'm going to be releasing other review videos eventually. Like I said, I know I've released this very late, considering everyone's probably completed it a while ago, like I did. But yeah, you know, I'll see how I feel in the future. I will definitely release other videos. You know, if you have any comments, you know, chuck them in the comment section. Any games you want me to cover, if I have them, then I'll more than happy to do them. But if it's like, I don't really buy a lot of new games unless they're really good. But yeah, you know, any suggestions, chuck them in the comment box. If you really enjoyed the video and you want to see more when I do release them, chuck a subscribe as well. But yeah, guys, I'll leave you all to it, and all the best.